Thank you everyone for joining us today. The panel topic is about cloud as a transformative enabler. And if I look back 5 years, I think so at that time the discussion was around what is SaaS, what is IaaS and the PaaS. But now it's more around the cloud transformation. And even the recent examples on the public domain, it validates that cloud story is still very relevant for different enterprises and the customers. So today we're going to speak that, is it really just a technology or an enabler, and how it's creating an impact across a different ecosystem? So we'll start the conversation. Laurie, will come to you. And an important question is if you look at the cloud architecture or the cloud technology, as per you, what is the most underestimated challenge in the cloud architecture? Is it about the culture? Is it about the operating model or the talent? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm going to go off-piste immediately and say all three are important. But I do think if you had asked the question 5 years ago, I probably would have said, technology is I don't want to call it commodity, but it was fairly well known. I think, and so the technology risks were a bit more mitigated. I think that it is more pronounced now because so much of at least the work that we do at Kalen is driven by customers trying to adopt cloud, trying to modernize their existing cloud environments to be AI ready. And AI is changing literally every minute, every day in terms of what it's a moving goalpost. And so technology has gotten harder, but at the same time, it fundamentally changes businesses. It's changing our business, it's changing all of our customers' businesses. And so that culture and a culture of change and change management is really important. And then ultimately, obviously, the operating impact. The last thing I would say is, and throw a little bit of a curveball, is I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is, and Ravi talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's that change of driving through your middle management, the rising management that you have, because the ability to actually evolve your business internally is kind of locked in with them in many ways, because you've got to change habits. You've got to get people to think AI first. You also have to listen to your customers more. And so I really do think that while I agree with much of what Ravi said in terms of being able to take advantage of lower, less experienced talent moving up, that the leadership matters so much, not just in setting direction, but also on the ground, really understanding how you're changing.
Interesting. And Ranjit, if we come to you, and from the consulting industry, cloud is not only about the adoption, but the true transformation of the cloud wave. How it is enabled, and what are the trends that you're seeing in that as of today?
Yeah, and maybe I'll build on what Laurie said here as well. A few years ago, we started on this cloud journey like most folks, I guess, in the room in 2014, 2015. But pretty soon we found that cloud wasn't about the cloud. It was about getting people to adopt technology much faster, to rethink their core business processes, to think about outcomes differently. It was, I think it was The World is Flat. In that book, he talked about cloud as being the superhighway to just give access to more technology as it comes down the pipe much faster. So in many ways, cloud prepared our clients to get ready for AI. And today we don't really talk about cloud as much, just like we don't talk about .com anymore post 2002. Right? It's just become the nature of technology itself. But it did act as a catalyst to help us think about AI and embrace that more. So most of our work today around cloud, it hardly ever comes up as cloud. It mostly we talk about outcomes. We talk about, revenue cycle management or food supply chain wastage or anti-money laundering. And that cloud helps enable that transformation is par for course. So I think AI will go the same way. We will stop talking about AI and LLMs, and at least we want to take the direction of travel towards outcomes, and that's what I think it will enable more and more.
Interesting. And John, if I come to you, maybe you have a different perspective because you're taking care of the regulated industry, the financial services, and it's always the key aspect or the challenge in terms of adoption of the cloud in that industry. But what are your views, and how are you seeing the change in the trends, specifically in the financial services industry?
First of all, I want to agree with Laurie. It's like the fundamental change in the delivery of cloud is really more a different way of doing business than it is about technology, right? It's kind of delivery and distribution channel. primarily to make costs variable, right? It's to be an innovation engine. So you don't have to make large upfront capital investments in technology to get the capability within your organization. And to take advantage of that, you have to change the way you do business, right? You have to be thinking about product development differently, how that scales with the cost of your infrastructure. And to your point, it's just accelerated with AI, right? You couldn't have these technologies if they weren't on cloud. Wouldn't make sense for any one of us to build our own infrastructure, to build our own foundation models. So the ability to actually get access to them and then do inference at scale on a global basis, that's there because of cloud. The biggest challenge is still people, right? Pushing the thought of how do I use these tools myself in my own businesses and how does it affect my product development, which is really key to success. But from a regulated perspective, I think particularly as we think about scaling these into production in regulated industries, financial services is a little further ahead in thinking about that because they've had to deal with these regulatory challenges in the past. But that key to have a well-managed data estate that unlocks the insights and then to be able to do that in a governed, secure manner. And if you think about a future that is so heavily agentic, right? Individual components that are well-tailored to do individual tasks, the ability to actually do that at scale is the challenge. And the only way that succeeds if platform providers like ourselves take away that undifferentiated heavy lift for business, make that component of their business innovation simpler. And I think that's kind of our key to serving financial services is to take out the non-business value part of creating business value.
Interesting. And Laurie, coming to you and taking the keywords from John, he touched upon the talent is one of the key aspects to look into it. And how do you see the talent in your organization transforming from a capability or the capacity perspective to cater to the requirements of the customer?
Yeah, gosh, on every level. I've been in services for multiple decades. And I think I've been saying for the last 15, 20 years, services needs to fundamentally change. And certainly there were changes with cloud and cloud apps and the way that you delivered. But this is absolutely changing everything about services, which is why I'm excited to have the opportunity to lead a company through it. But when you talk about the talent, I think that there are some paradigms in the past that you can compare with. Like, for instance, if you go back to the day of rolling out global delivery centers, my best engineers when I was doing that were those that were really good architects, those that knew how to parse work in a way that multiple people could work on it. I actually think there's a correlation there with AI in the sense that it's no longer the best coder. In fact, sometimes the best coder doesn't, I hate to say this because I probably have a room of some engineers in here, but the best coder isn't actually gonna win or transform your organization. It's the person that understands, Robbie talked earlier about context. It's the person that understands the context, can put it together, can bring the rest of the team along. And more importantly, what we're hearing from our customers is teach us. You've already started thinking about how to parse your business in ways that takes AI, is AI forward in how you deliver. Help us understand how to do that. So, well, we started as a very engineering forward organization. Engineering is in our DNA, but over the last 2 to 3 years, we've added a tremendous amount of product management resources, change management resources, industry strategists that are allowing us to actually help lead our customers through it. So I think it kind of changes on all levels, but it ultimately comes down to folks that are willing to adapt new ways of working and are able to think about the bigger picture and put those things together. And ironically, sometimes the more junior people are more geared towards being able to do that.
Interesting. And Ranjit, if I put the same question to you, as Laurie mentioned, that it's changing every day from a talent perspective or even the processes. How do you see in the advisory and the consulting industry?
Yeah, I mean, building again on what Laurie said, certainly there's a general shift we see around more product-aligned teams and full-stack teams. So if you really bring a multidisciplinary team together that understands payments functionally, but also then understands the technology from an engineering perspective, maybe data science perspective, cybersecurity perspective, and regulation if it's insurance, and comes together to be able to solve not just today's problem, but what the future of payments may look like. That, I think, is where the real operating model starts to shift. And those kinds of folks you may have, but that's what you need to recruit and hire and train, etc. And again, to Laurie's point, and I think somewhat what Ravi was saying as well, I think our best talent is still coming from right out of college, because they are critical thinkers. They don't have a BAU mindset. They're wanting to change. They're AI native. And when unleashed with the right guidance and guardrails, they really have the potential, I think, to reimagine everything. So if you don't bet on that generation and weaponize them accordingly, then all we will do is just tweak around the edges and automate bad processes and, go down the RPA path. So we're very much betting on bringing those folks forward in, forward deployed engineer type models or whatever else, but really around reimagination of the business. And I think that's also for this new generation, very uplifting. They want to come for mission. They want to come for purpose. And if, enabled in the right way, I think they can have a huge impact. So
I may take the counter to that. Like, one of the things I think are most compelling, and you mentioned it, is sort of that ability to kind of push further into product. It's the folks in the organization who understand the domain context can drive so much more now than they could before. And so you're even seeing that bridge from some of the productivity benefits that kind of Ravi mentioned from a code development perspective, actually go into the product development process as well, where the tools are acting as the bridge between what would have typically been someone who could do product and actually try to get to technical design. It's actually much easier. I've actually seen one of the challenges, just the organizational stasis and sort of that kind of frozen middle management you were talking about, where teams are taking those experienced product people, moving out to separate groups and saying, reimagine the process as if you didn't have to worry about our existing people, our existing processes, reinvent the business. And you can't do that without the context. Like, the tools, as good as they are, don't provide that domain experience yet. And it's really the teams with the domain experience, kind of, if they can unencumber themselves from existing ways of working, that I think have the real transformative impact.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that I think of the younger talent as the change agent, but you still have to have the lessons learned at the table to be able to actually take advantage of it without a lot of risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think coupled together, they can be pretty potent, right?
Now, if you look at the other side, from a demand side, the customers, what kind of conversations you all are having in those boardrooms? Is it still about the IT cost optimization, or is more on the transformation deals where nothing is spoken about the technology? It percolates like organically to the technology. So would love to understand from any one of you, like how the conversation looks like as of today.
I can start, and then John and Laurie. I think there's certainly always a flavor of cost optimization, particularly as our clients are finding ways to fund their AI journeys. But inevitably, we try and bundle them together to be able to say, how do you find ways to fund these? And there are some portions of the business that you may shrink to grow other more strategic areas. But inevitably, the conversation, at least we like to take it, is towards outcomes, like I mentioned earlier. And, sometimes we reflect on what is our true moat. And depending on the day of the week, I think it changes. But if you really think about firms like us, and, we've been around for 180 years, there are only two things, I think, fundamentally that we think, we've stood by. One is client or customer centricity, and the other is business outcomes. And how we look at business outcomes, whether it's cloud or it's digital or software engineering, now AI, are all means to the end. So we really try and stay focused on business outcomes, not only for today, but also reimagining them. And I think that's the conversation we like to drive our clients towards. And inevitably, 9 out of 10 times, that's where they want to engage as well. But sometimes they don't always feel like they have, the third-party partners, etc., have the credibility or the experience, etc. But once they get over that, they really do want to get to business outcomes.
Yeah, it's all about business outcomes right now. It's realizing the value more quickly. I think there are enough examples across the industry of success, and we touched on a little earlier, particularly customer experience, any kind of process automation, whether it's claims and insurance or mortgage processing. There are enough examples in the industry of success where people want to replicate that from an efficiency perspective. And the question is, how do they get to production scale more quickly? I think the other part of the conversation that's changing, though, is how do these tools sort of change revenue generation within the organization? What are the ability to expand business models sort of outside what they're doing today from just a process automation perspective? Like, automation's okay, but really what they're looking for is those differentiation opportunities. One, the ability to do what they're doing today from a business perspective at a global scale has fundamentally changed. If you're expert in one market, your ability to analyze other markets and then take that expertise out on a global basis, the friction to do that is so much smaller than it was even 18 months ago. And then the ability to just reimagine products that don't exist because you can process essentially all the information in the world in near real time, allows you new opportunities, whether that's kind of sentiment or kind of research on a global basis, to build new products that you just couldn't do before.
Yeah, all the things. I agree with them wholeheartedly. I think that the conversation, we're an AWS partner. We are dedicated to AWS as a hyperscaler. Everybody's got to choose one, and we think it's the best for us and for our customers. And I think that what's really changed a lot for us in the last couple of years is the conversations with our customers were largely about compute, processing, TCO. And now it's much more not only what new revenue sources can I identify, transformation, but also the cost of dealing with tech debt is a lot less than it used to be. We have an entire suite called Accelerate that allows people to move off of tech debt that they've been afraid to touch for years. And I know we've got some PEs in the firm that have done a lot of roll-ups. A lot of the reasons your roll-ups haven't moved as fast is because they're afraid to go back and touch that old code. And so I think it also really raises opportunities to go and deal with cost situations that they've been afraid to touch in the past.
If I look at you touch upon the innovation with the supply side, whether it's a hyperscaler or the ISVs. But do we see that the co-innovation is happening with the customers also? That how the next set of the use cases or the applicability of the use cases will look like? Do you see that also happening?
Yeah, I think most certainly. I wouldn't say it's widespread, but there are mature customers of ours who very much want to go down that path, or are going down that path. Actually, John's company and us, with a large healthcare provider, we are doing that today. That we've collectively built a solution that we co-invested in, AWS and us, and we're working with them, and now we're white labeling it to like 4 other healthcare companies, again around revenue cycle management. And the way the construct is, because they invested as well, it was a 3-way investment. We're also partaking in whatever revenue gets generated out of that in proportion to the investment. But now this company, of course, is a lot more mature and forward thinking. But there are at least half a dozen other examples across industries that our clients are similarly interested in, engaging.
Interesting. You touched upon the partnership, that there's a very strong partnership between the hyperscaler and the consulting to enable the customer. How do you see in this journey the evolution of the partnership? How we see the entrant of the new entities? It could be the MSPs or the ISVs or the hyperscalers to enable and build that joint value proposition. Where do you see that? And what role they play in that?
I think in all these transformations, there's a cost to achieve, which is the hurdle rate. And depending on where our clients are in their journey, they sometimes need some help to get past the cost to transform. Inevitably, that's where partnerships work really well, because collectively we can figure out ways to lower the hurdle rate, either through some financial engineering or some long-term contract that says, we will get you to 20% savings in year 2, but we will make our money in year 5 or by year 5, year 6. And that's where I think pooling our P&Ls together makes a big difference. And sometimes it's more than one, but certainly there's a hyperscaler always in the mix, AWS more often than most, but also a number of other smaller ecosystem players that all bring different strengths around it.
So Laurie, how is it the experience for you in the collaboration with the hyperscaler world?
Yeah, I think first of all, the hyperscaler world's evolved a lot. You look at AWS specifically, and it's a ecosystem. It's a platform. It's the tooling. It's all the things around it. And as models have, especially as customers that are driven that way because of AI. One of the things that we saw about a year and a half-ish ago were customers that thought they were never going to move to the cloud decided they had to move to the cloud because they couldn't afford to run the compute themselves. And we've seen that happen quite a bit. But what it has done is opened up a number of ISV relationships that we need to partner with. I also think that it's enabled a lot of smaller, earlier stage ISVs, which raises its own level of risk that I think you have to be careful with. I'm sure you see this a lot, but it's allowed people to move faster. And I do think you have to do it through partnerships with ISVs, whether it be vertical based or horizontal.
And I think to that point, we've gotten more vertical based in our approach from a selling perspective. Like we've reorganized a little bit around industries and industry focus. But even so, we're a technology platform, right? And we really count on our partners to bring that industry and business expertise when we're looking to solve customer problems. As Renji said, like some of the examples of what we're doing together are something we call like process to agent. Look at process workflows through various industries and actually turn them into individual agents as a way to serve better. But that technology component's only one part of the business transformation, right? There's the people, the operations, the business strategy. And that is the first and most fundamental part of driving any type of business transformation. And that's where kind of our partners excel. And so we're there to support their ability to help drive that business transformation, for understanding how the technology best fits within the industry domain.
So John, if I look at the financial services industry, and let's define the next wave of the financial services industry, do you see it more like a platform convergence or more on the hyper specialization?
I'm excited about what Agentic's going to do from an ecosystem and application development perspective. Over the last several years, because there's so much legacy out there, we've seen many of our partners look at creating kind of tailored ecosystem with the latest technologies, whether it's a bank in a box, insurer in a box, taking sort of modern technology, looking at APIs to do the integration, to really bring together best of breed capabilities when kind of doing next generation financial services. It's still a heavy lift though, right? Not only do you have to think about how do I do data transformation between providers, how do I kind of customize to individual APIs, and how do I do all of those integrations on a one-off basis? Moving to more agentic workflows, and what we're already seeing now is internal to an organization, if we take something like kind of KYC, onboarding customers, there's something that does sanctions, something that does anti-money laundering. Each of those components is now an agent inside. As the standards become more available, it's easy to expand those outside, right? And you're going to have real agent marketplaces, whether those are tools to get the latest data or actually the ability to just chat with essentially as a service solution for those components, that the ability for the industry to rapidly innovate its platforms and take best of breed components out there is going to change rapidly in the next 2 years. And so I think you're going to have really an explosion of capabilities from individual capabilities across the market. And I don't think that's actually unique to financial services.
And Ajit, as John mentioned about agentic AI, there's like a pace in terms of the innovation in the technology. And on top of it, everyone is aligning the verticalization strategy. How, as a partner, you're coping up with this space and be ready to provide that like a customer outcomes or the solutions, how you're coping up with that, and what is the playbook around that?
So, clearly that's a $1 million question, right? But I think firms like ours, as well as our clients, if the one thing they can solve for right now or get better prepared for is what we call structural agility, because the pace of change continues and will continue to, pivot. But most firms, including firms like ours, we're still talking months and quarters and years sometimes, to, even pivot on basic technology choices. So certainly that's one part of it, right? Just to become more structurally agile, not only in terms of how we swap our technology, but how we retrain people, pivot them on different things, etc. The second is we're constantly, and I think this is a role that we think we're going to continue to play at least for the next 5 years, is helping our clients navigate this whole proliferation of technology choices. And when do you use Anthropic, and when do you use, maybe OpenAI versus you build an on-premise, GPU intensive data set versus leverage the public cloud, etc. That churn, I think, will continue for a while. And that's a role that we need to play, and we play, but you have to be a few steps ahead to be able to help navigate that for our clients, because it's complicated. But as that continues, I think the whole, our challenge, and I think collectively the industry's challenge, is also just to be able to, experiment quickly, pivot, and be comfortable with that. Because I think we will continue to see that, as we go forward. It won't settle for any time in the near future. Before it settles, it'll change again.
Interesting. And Laurie, if I come to you, you're the rising star in the partner community. How do you cope up with the pace in terms of the technology and the demand of the customers?
I think the first thing is, when I look at it internally, we made a decision a while back that we were going to take, we do, a lot of the work that we do is really geared around towards either infrastructure migration, data work around getting ready for models, ML, and also application modernization and greenfield. So we took each one of these and actually broke them apart. They already were in terms of different project processes, but started to identify where we could agentify them. And so in doing that, I think one of the things that I had to be comfortable with and had to get my board comfortable with and is that we're going to make some investments. Some of those investments are going to actually pay off and that IP is going to be sustainable. Some of them are going to be replaced by products that come to market. But if we don't do this now, we're not changing the business fast enough. And so, I would talk a lot about we have to be on the train. I don't actually know where the train is going to end up, but if we're not on the train, we're definitely not going to get there. And so, and as it's turned out, if I look across those 4 workflows, 3 of them, we're still using the IP that we developed and will continue for the foreseeable future. One of them, there's a tool that's been shipped that we're able to use now. Actually, it's AWS's tool. We're able to use to replace that. And so, that's a long way of saying I think we have to be comfortable with understanding that we have to drive the change. We have to set the frameworks we're going to drive the change against. And then we have to be eyes wide open and not precious about we built this thing. So we're a services company. We're not a product company. The line is getting blurrier, sure. But if there's something better on the market, we need to use that tool. And that's also the way that we encourage customers to move forward.
Sure. No, definitely those tools help in accelerating. But John, if I come to you, what are partners asking to the hyperscaler? What is the demand that is coming from the partner community to the hyperscaler?
Well, that's a good question. So much of it is more clarity on where the platform is going to be 6, 12 months from now, which has been very difficult over the last kind of year or so. You really do almost have to skate to where you think the technology is going to be in 6 months to have sort of a platform strategy that is scalable, just because the technology has been so rapid in its innovation over the last few years. But I think it's very much what our customers are asking too. It's how do we get to easier production deployments at scale in a way that's highly secure, highly resilient, highly observable, without having to worry about which model is going to be the model that's best next year, which is going to be the best agentic framework that's going to end up next year. It's providing a platform that gives flexibility to allow the technology to change underneath. And as Laurie said, not being overly sensitive about having to build some stuff now that you expect that you really don't want to maintain for the long term, but need to for near value, that you're looking to work with a partner like ourselves to sort of automate those things that you really don't want to maintain in the long term away, so to speak.
So Ranjit, if I look at it, I think so as for John, the co-innovation is a key ask coming from the partner community. But if you look at the other angles like the co-sell, there's a lot of focus on the co-sell that is between the partner, the consulting, and the hyperscaler, as well as the co-market and the co-build. How do you see the transformation in that to make it really happen in terms of reality and winning the customers also? What needs to be done around that to make it happen?
I mean, again, sorry to keep picking on you, John, but we've been co-selling what we call sell with our alliance partners for a long time. And they have, very mature programs around that as well. And inevitably that allows us collectively to put in incredible amount of investment to play. We collectively have, several $1 billion of sell with business together, which then also funds the next set of innovations. And sometimes those will just migrate out of your data center because it's falling apart. 2, we will re-platform your entire, set of trading applications onto the cloud. 2, you're going to stand up a new business in Brazil. We will help stand it up. Or that you are, merging 2 companies and we will bring them onto one platform. That collective go-to-market funding often helps us get in front of all those. And essentially, we're only limited by our creativity in terms of kinds of things we can go after, from existing businesses to brand new products to new services, new businesses, stand-ups, etc. And Amazon in particular, I'm just using that as an example, but many of the hyperscalers have many different funding sources. They have innovation funds, they have credits around different things, they have resale programs, which all allow us to lower that barrier to entry that I talked about earlier. And our clients love that because that gets them benefits much sooner, it's outcome oriented, and they don't have to put a big hole in their pocket. They can start to see benefits so they can then plow those back into other areas.
That's interesting. And Laurie, definitely the Gen AI is powered by cloud. And there's a lot of conversation around the POC to the production. What is the playbook so that we have a better success rate from a POC to the production? What needs to be done around that?
So I think the first thing is clarifying, is it a proof of concept or proof of value? Those are two different things. And so what we have found is that when we're very clear about what we're trying to prove for the customer day one, the odds of actually moving to production are a lot higher. So, and this has been a learning. We did about 100 proof of concepts with AWS about a year and a half ago, and we all learned together about what it's going to take to be successful. So the first thing is being very clear on what is the value the customer's expecting and understanding, is this truly going to be a proof of concept or something that's moved to production? But the second and the biggest barrier, honestly, with many of our customers is they aren't ready. Either their data isn't ready, which is obviously an opportunity for us to help, or in many cases, their business model just isn't ready. And so helping them think through those things, and that varies based on industry, but it's also the human dynamic of being ready to actually move things to production.
I think so. You coined a great term the proof of concept versus a proof of value. Definitely the customers are looking for the outcomes and how it creates an impact. John, how you see that in the financial services sector?
Yeah, 100% agree with Laurie. And we were talking a little bit earlier that some of that MIT study about what's successful or not, it's because people were doing proof of concepts to understand the technology, not proof of values to kind of improve the business outcomes. And we've worked with our customers in the same thing, where they'll come in with 20 ideas, and pretty quickly you can figure out, well, a third of them are really bad ideas, actually. It's not a good fit for Gen AI. A third, you're like, well, those are good ideas, but there are actually more traditional approaches that work better. And then a third, those will actually provide some business value. So that's where we need to invest into. And I can only echo what Laurie said from a data perspective. So many of our customers, as they started this journey and they go through those proof of value, realize that they don't have the data investments necessary to support the business transformation you're looking for. And so many customers actually very excited at first and then took a step back and said, well, you know what, actually, let's figure out our enterprise data strategy. And it doesn't mean fixing all your data, but at least for those domains where you see real business value, it's making the investments there before moving ahead with your proof of values. And then the acceleration into production, I think that's actually just catching up with the tooling. The tooling has begun to acknowledge how people are actually building applications. The agentic approach we're seeing across the industry isn't like someone had this great idea. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Gen AI did things for us? It was more how we saw customers building applications that actually minimized hallucinations, were predictable, provided real value to humans by breaking down complex processes into smaller processes. The agentic outcomes, I think, are really just a reflection of that more sophisticated way of building applications to get into production. And now we're just beginning to see sort of enough commonality in the platform to do that I think actually the agentic production, particularly into next year, should get much easier. But the data challenges and the business value challenges, those are still fundamental.
So Ranjit, in your conversations with the customer, as the data strategy is still a weak point for them, how do you enable them, or how you ensure that the story is moving forward and they are able to see the value at the customer side?
I mean, certainly it starts by, get a better handle on that data. More often than not, it's fragmented, it's not, authenticated, it's not, access control is an issue. Now, in part of, the Gen AI, I'm sure, many of you have experienced this, or at least heard about it, is when many of our clients in the initial phases would run a Gen AI pilot on Copilot or something, they'd find that data that people were not supposed to see would show up, like somebody else's W-2 or something else. So a large part about this is also making sure the data is appropriately segmented and protected. So, we are still, a fair amount of work is still in data preparation, cleansing, wrangling, etc. There are a number of tools out there and platforms as well that our clients are leveraging for that. Mostly all, third party to accelerate that. There are also a number of AI-based startups that are helping accelerate that journey. But that is certainly very foundational. But again, I think, for us to go after a large insurance company and try and clean up their data, that could be a 5-year exercise in itself. So you just pick the highest value data, segments or areas and focus on that support the business case or the, specific part of the business product set that you're going after. And then over time, you start to go, address the rest of the data challenges, etc. But, I think just being surgical about that is one good way to make progress sooner.
Interesting. And Laurie, if 3 years back we go, at that time everyone was talking about how many cloud certified talent do we have? But I think so in today's world it has shifted and everyone is talking about the Gen AI certified talent. Similar to this, what are the other changes that you're seeing in the partner ecosystem, but what the customers are demanding from you?
I mean, in our case, they're demanding, and we're very happy to do this, more strategic services, whether it be vertical or whether it be product-based, thinking beyond the engineering stack and helping them put the pieces together. And I do think one of the things we've done is we've built, with a lot of help from training that's out there, but we've built our own Calent Gen AI badge. Everybody in the company, from my CFO to everybody, regardless of what they're doing, has to be badged in that as well. And so I think that is important to give us a common language.
Sure. And John, we're seeing that to support the partners, there are a lot of introduction of the competencies. We see that by the customer segment, by the industry, or even by the technology. How do you see that playing in terms of accelerating the confidence in the partner ecosystem as well as accelerating the business?
Yeah, those competencies are really designed to showcase two things. One, a fundamental competence in sort of working with AWS. So whatever solution the partner is providing, it's secure, it's resilient, it's sort of optimized for cost, right? Just a fundamental, it's well suited for AWS. And then on the industry side, even more important is this is a partner we've worked with who understands the domain, understands the problems in the space, and has had demonstrated success in that area. And it's one we can stand behind with confidence, say, this is a partner we have confidence in and we want you to work with. And so it helps us kind of signal to the world that our partner ecosystem is appropriate for the right use cases and the right customers.
Last question to anyone, how the future looks like in terms of the cloud transformation going forward?
It's very bright. I just think, mic drop. I think there's obviously a lot of change going on within services, within our customers. I think that this is, to me, people talk about it kind of being related to core cloud, when cloud this is much more of a transformational shift than that, and I would say even more so than even the internet, the .com era is, in terms of how it's gonna impact not just businesses but lives. So I think there's a lot to learn.
Great, this is a fascinating discussion. I think so. The key learnings, as mentioned, it's a transformational shift, and AI is inseparable from the cloud. So going forward, definitely there's a lot to cover in the cloud transformation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.